G'day and welcome back to vlog number 4 if you're counting. And excuse my voice today, I've still got this horrible cold and the wind outside's rocking the hang around, so there's probably all sorts of noise. Now there's an aircraft taxiing out here. It all happens at once. But today I'm doing this vlog on one subject only, and that's Mr. John Taylor. Mr. John Taylor is a bit of a hero in the hobby field right now because he's the man who's taken the FAA to court over the issue of requiring model flyers and drone users to register with the FAA before they can legally fly their craft, if their craft weighs over 250 grams. So the FAA brought this rule out a year ago now. Just it was Christmas 2015, I think the rule came out, and the John Taylor, like many people in America, thought this is not right because Congress passed a ruling to say there will be no new rules in respect to model aircraft. So how can the FAA put a new rule in that requires registration if Congress has said you can't do it? So he's taken them to court. Now the AMA should have done this, and there was talk, I think, of the AMA taking legal action, but they backed down. I'm not sure why. I think the AMA is like a lot of large organisations. They tend to take the stance that it's easier to influence friends than enemies, so let's keep our enemies, let's keep the FAA close and be pally-wally and buddy and not offend them too much because we want to retain the influence we've already got. But if we dare to sue them, well then we may become persona non grata and our input will be completely ignored. And that is a valid perspective to take. It's not the one I would take, but you can see why they might have taken that. Now John Taylor, however, he's gone and done what I would have done, and he's challenged them directly. You know, as I probably mentioned a few weeks ago, I challenged our airspace regulator directly, and I won because they were misrepresenting the meaning of their regulations. And I said that's not right, and proved I was right, they were wrong. So it can be done. The small guy can win some victories. And it looks like John Taylor is getting very close to winning some victories in the USA because there was a court hearing this week, and a transcript, or actually a recording of that court hearing, is linked in the bottom on the description on this video. I recommend you go and listen to it because it involves John Taylor, a panel of judges, and a representative from the FAA, who I assume is a lawyer, a nice young lady by the sound of her, and they're arguing the case. Now, John Taylor submits that the FAA should not have been allowed to pass this new rule because the Congress prohibited it explicitly under Section 336, I think it was, or something like that. So they had no right to do so. And the FAA has come back with a counter-argument saying that they've always had the right to require operators of aircraft to register. It's just they haven't enforced it for models until 2015. And of course, legal points backwards and forwards, but honestly, listen to the recording of the court session and you will see that John Taylor's scoring a lot of points in this one, and the judges are asking some really good questions, and the FAA are right on the back foot, really on the back foot. And the basic argument the FAA is using is that under, I think, Section 47 or something, they've had the right to require all aircraft operators to register. That's biting them in the bum a bit, because if they then define all aircraft as to include anything that flies, then they haven't done their job because they haven't required that registration. And if they want to register models, then they're going to have people registering before they can fly paper airplanes, anything that flies, frisbees, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a real kind of a legal mess, but I think ultimately the judges are realising that this is more about common sense and the fact that although the FAA may claim they have a right, doesn't matter how they put it, they have created a new rule, and that is a violation of what Congress specifically said they should not do. So the outcome will be amazingly interesting. Now, I think John has had a fundraising thing going. I saw on the internet somewhere that he's been raising funds, 50 grand or something, to fund this action. I am really surprised that the AMA didn't dig deep into their pockets and help them out. But maybe it's to keep this distance again. They don't want to get offside with the FAA. So instead of looking after their members' rights, they would rather just say, yeah, we're with you, good buddies. I don't know. It's a political thing. I'm not going to get too involved in that. But as I say, not the way I would have done it. In fact, that's not the way I do it. When I see things that are wrong, I challenge them. And people should do that. If we let, what is it they say? For evil to prosper requires only that good men do nothing. And that seems to be a trend these days. People go, oh, that's terrible. But we're not going to do anything about it. Don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to, we're all right. It affects other people. No, because if everyone takes that approach, then people get away with murder. People in positions of authority can abuse their power and do whatever the hell they like. because they know that no one's going to complain. It's only when people like John Taylor and myself come along and complain and call them to account and say, hey, what you've done is not right. Please show me the statutory, the regulatory backup you have to support your position. And if they can't, then they're in the crap. And that's what I've done. That's what John Taylor's doing. Hopefully he prevails, but it's not done yet. The judges have very much, looks like they're siding with him, but they have conceded a few points on the FAA's case. So it's still an unknown. Now, I'll be watching this very closely, and I suggest you do too, because if the legal requirement to register in America is overturned, then that makes it much less likely that other countries which haven't already implemented a regulation or a registration system, makes it much more likely that they won't do so. Now, I know Ireland's implemented one, and there's a few other countries around the world where you have to register before you can legally fly your drone. New Zealand hasn't, but I gather I know the Airline Pilots Association, they've said publicly they want to have people registering to use their drones, and there's also money making involved here. I mean, you know, in a country like New Zealand, there may only be a few thousand people, but you charge them on a per craft basis. I mean, it's a little bit of money, adds up. Somewhere someone's got their finger in the pie and they'll be pushing for it as well. So yeah, it's not, you know, I would like to see the American situation overthrown because it makes it less likely it'll happen here. And as we know, as I mentioned in my last vlog, registration doesn't stop people doing bad things. It really doesn't. I was on the SUAS webcast this morning, and Gary brought up an interesting point too, Gary Mortimer. He said basically that the FAA's justification for the registration was that it would enable them to educate people, educate them as to what's right and what's wrong. But by the same token, they said the registration process is simple. It only takes 7 minutes and costs $5. So how much can you educate people in 7 minutes? Because I've seen no follow-up stuff. So yeah, it's yet to be proven. In fact, all the facts indicate that registration does nothing except complicate the process and put some coins in the pockets of bureaucrats. So there you go. That's my little vlog number 4, and I'm sorry it's not more diverse. I will put another channel in though. Speaking of channels that I think you should look at, one of my favourite channels is Mike's Electrical, and he pulls stuff apart. He's a really interesting guy, Englishman, and he looks at things from a very analytical viewpoint. He makes bespoke electronic systems, lighting systems, all sorts of things. So he gives you insight into some of the work he does, some of the tools he uses. Really, really worth looking at. If you're interested in electronics and electricity and stuff like that, then have a look at his channel. You'll probably find it as interesting as I do. So he pulls down some amazing stuff. Have a look, see what you think. Anyway, comments, questions, usual place. Big thumbs up for John Taylor. Hopefully he wins. See what happens. AMA, where were you? Bye for now.
Whoa.